Welcome back to Vegas Live with Ninon. It's so funny because Pureza is she's my producer and she counts us in. And I have Pete Barbutti with me. And Barbutti, I'm pronouncing it the English way. Can't help it. I'm English. What do you want me to do, Pete?
That's right. That's good enough.
And he said that's good enough. And I said, well, in England that wouldn't be good enough. It has to be the right way. Barbutti.
The origin is Italian, so
yeah, Barbutti.
Barbutti.
Yeah, okay, we got it right.
But you're a Brit, so
I'm a Brit, so it's Barbutti. What can I say? Well, welcome to Vegas Live with Ninon. Not welcome to Vegas because you are so well known. Vegas.
Well, I came here before most of you were born.
Well, definitely me.
No. 1960.
1960. That was definitely before me.
Yeah, and all these roads were all dirt roads. Only the strip was
I would not know. I didn't
downtown.
remember. I didn't remember any of that.
Yeah, it was a different town.
It was a different town then, but then you had the Frank Sinatras and Well, was that actually? That was a little bit before that, wasn't it?
No, that was just about the time they hit big when the Rat Pack was created. When Sinatra asked Sammy Davis to work with him at the Sands, and it was a different thing then. The casinos were owned by people, not corporations.
Well, yeah,
so you'd make a phone call and somebody would come in and say, let's do this and let's do that. And,
it was a family thing. It was their own hotel.
Yeah.
It was their own thing. Even though it was mafia owned, which a lot of them were, but it was still a family affair. It was still run very, very well.
Even the mentality when Caesars was sold to another group, which was the same group under a different name or something, they had the idea that Frank Sinatra was getting too much money. Frank was getting $50,000 a night if he did one show or two. So and of course the room was packed. It was sold out for every show.
Yes.
And the casino drop opening night was $1.1 million.
Opening night.
And they didn't want to pay Sinatra $50,000. So it's a different. They said we'll get somebody with less of a name and then we'll make more money. But
that doesn't work. How can you? How can you compete with Frank Sinatra and somebody else?
Yeah, I had the good fortune to work with him. I did some shows on the road, but then I did one of the highlights. I did 2 weeks at Carnegie Hall. 64-piece orchestra.
How was that?
Well, it was amazing. To think of being there when Sinatra is singing New York, New York at Carnegie Hall with a 64-piece orchestra. It was. There's one anecdote I have to tell you that reminds us all that in life there really are them and us.
There are them and us.
Yeah, and Frank said, my door is open anytime you want to come in. I said, I know that, boss. So I had the dressing room right down the hall from him. So every night after the show, I'd usually, just stop and say goodnight. And I didn't want to be like the kind of guy that hangs out, in his dressing room, because he has his people.
And also his private time and everything else.
And so after the first week, I thought, now he's going to think I'm being kind of snobby. I better put in an appearance. So I poured a glass of wine. The show was over. And I walked into the dressing room, and Frank was in the shower. Right, Barbara was sitting at the bar, and she said, nice show, Pete. I said, thank you, Barbara. She said, Frank's in the shower. He'll be right out. And I looked, and there was a little settee there, and there were two people sitting there. One was George Steinbrenner, and the other was George Bush.
Well,
who wasn't
president yet. At that time.
But the two of them were sitting there, and they nodded to me, and I nodded to them.
Like,
and I turned around and walked out
what
the hell am I going to talk to these guys about? Did you see any good movies lately?
But wait, just hang on a second. You're a comedian as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you never are short of words or something to say.
Well, you especially if you've done it for a long time, you learn to control situations. And then you call upon your memory of, this
and
happened.
When and then you can bring certain things in and sort of make it all comfortable.
Yes, and a lot of it is editing. Understanding when you can talk about this.
And editing within your own system. We're not talking about editing on paper.
While you're on stage, you're editing.
I've never heard of that, actually, that particular word, of editing on stage, but I can understand it because you know your audience, and sometimes you can't say this or that will go better on, and you kind of look at your audience.
Yeah, I get called one night. I used to work at the Sahara a lot. I was a regular in the lounge, and then every once in a while they call me to work in the showroom. And they called one night and said, hey, we had an opening act get sick. Can you work? And I only lived in those days, the town was so small, it was only 15 minutes from the hotel.
So it's easy for you to get there.
Yeah, I said, wait a minute. So I did a quick shave, took a shower, threw my tux on, and ran down to the Sahara and came in the back entrance, so I didn't see the marquee. And I walked out on stage to see what was going on, and there were all guitars. There were no other musical instruments. There were just guitars. I said, who the hell am I wearing? It was one of those country acts, those real country acts, like Outlaw Country, Waylon Jennings or one of those guys.
Of course.
And I thought, what the hell am I going to
What
talk
am I
to this
gonna
audience
do
about?
now?
I had a tuxedo on, which was wrong. So I took my tie off and took my jacket off, rolled up my sleeves, and went out.
Here I am.
Just
Yay.
did a different kind of an act.
So you were able to do that because of your quick mind.
Well, it's
Because-
experience more than anything else.
And is that what kind of started you? How old were you?
Well, I started actually. My grandfather was an immigrant, so my father was the first generation.
From Italy.
Yes, and so we lived in a big house that everybody lived in. It was like a kibbutz, like
Not a kibbutz.
commune.
Yeah, I know what a kibbutz
Well,
is.
so
In
we
Israel.
yeah,
That's
so
an
we
Israeli
all-
terminology. It's like a farm.
Yeah, so we all lived together, and my two sisters took piano lessons because all of the young girls had to have piano lessons from the European influence. They have to have art.
Yes, yeah.
They have to have
You're
art.
right. Yeah, they all had to play piano.
Something, yeah.
something. But the piano.
Or if you're Jewish, violin. And so they used to take piano lessons, and they weren't very good. And the teacher would come to the house. We had an old upright piano, and the teacher would play, and they'd try to play, and they'd do the best they could. And then the teacher would leave, and I'd run in, and I would play the lesson by ear that they had.
So you played by ear. You just play.
Yeah.
You just had that talent.
Yeah.
Did you know you had that talent, and is that why you went to the piano? Because you
No, I don't know. It seemed like fun. And then when I was about 10,
fun.
when I was 10, they got me an accordion because every Italian in the neighborhood played, or Polish guy played the accordion. And so I
Well, you're
started
not
playing.
Polish.
No, but the
You're
Italian
Italian.
influence.
The-
So I started playing the accordion, and then I went into high school, and I had to have an elective subject. So I took band, and the teacher happened to be a very hip young teacher, and he got me on percussion, playing drums. Not like band drums, but
No.
like symphony,
Symphony drum,
timpani
yeah.
and all that.
Okay, yes.
And
I'm with you.
for some reason, I just took to that real good. And by the end of my freshman year, I was with the advanced band. I was working with the local
So
Philharmonic
you
Orchestra.
you were kind of born with this. You were kind of born with it.
I don't
You were-
know, but-
well, because you went to the piano, you played it, and you,
But I
you
was
were
lucky
able.
too, because during the course of my life, I
I
was
love when people say they're lucky. There's no luck involved in any
there
of it.
is.
Oh, come on.
being in the right place at the right time. And I was lucky to work with great musicians.
Well, that's
and-
because
and-
you had the talent.
and
You had
listen.
the ear.
You listen to them. And,
Yeah.
and
So
you-
how long were you with Frank Sinatra? Did you stay on and off with him?
Yeah, on and off, whenever, because he wouldn't work all the time.
No,
He'd take time off, months
Of
off
course.
or two. But
What was he like to work with?
well, he was more than one person. He was some people in show business, usually singers, are more than one person. Frank went through his thug stage where he thought he was the mafia, and we had a problem. I was working with Nat King Cole at the Sands in Vegas. He came in with a group and sat in the back, and you can't see the back of the room from
No.
the stage because the lights are so.
Like, yeah.
And I did a joke about Frank Jr. that he didn't like, so he got up and walked out to his party, and I didn't see them, so I didn't know about it. So then after the show, I'm walking through the casino, and some guy, with no neck came and said, Frank wants to talk to you. And I made the terrible mistake of saying, Frank who? Apparently there's only one Frank,
Oh, yes, and where you were,
Yeah,
actually,
right,
there was
yeah.
only be one.
So I said, oh, great, I want to meet him.
How old were you this time? What, 19, 20?
No, I was like 25 or
Oh,
something
20.
like that.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I at the table, he turned away, he was talking to the and he wouldn't. And I was sitting there, and no one else at the table was talking. It was like they were in the presence of the king, and they weren't allowed to talk. And everybody was drinking Jack Daniels, because that's what he was drinking. And it was just sort of like this king's court. And I waited, and finally I was there a little too long, and I said, well, I got to go. And he turned around and grabbed me by the sleeve and pulled me down in the chair in my face. And he
Wow.
said, I heard the joke you did about my kid. it stinks. Take it out of the act. You know, if he had said to me, you know, the joke about Junior affects me personally. I'm still sensitive about that thing. Would you take it out? Because you don't need it. I'd say, I'd be glad to. Thank you very much. But he got right in my face. It stinks. I said, first of all, the joke doesn't stink. The joke is a good joke.
In his face?
Yeah. And so
you got back in his face?
And we ended up screaming at each, and everybody at the table is saying, hey, take it easy, kid. You know, Frank's got a lot on his mind. Hey, who does it? The guy in the men's room has a lot on his mind. The guy who claims...
Well, maybe after he comes out he doesn't, but you know.
I mean, we got, you know, and then I was mad, and so I just stormed out, and I got out to the parking lot, and I thought to myself, stupid. Page of the New York Times. I got back. We're going to
like that back. Down to him.
I want to tell you another thing. It's a different story that has very victim very tight. Well, Vic was born and raised back east.
Okay.
And Vic moved to Palm Springs. He's married to Diane, the beautiful singer. And he's living in Palm Springs. But Vic was a creature of habit. He still had his laundry done in New Jersey. So he'd wait till he had like 25 dirty shirts, put them in a box, and send them to New Jersey. And the guy would send them back. And
a smelly package.
I mean, it's, you know, I mean, that's what Vic was. And he had the same bookie that he had when he was growing up in New Jersey. And the bookie's name was, all bookies have names like Tony Pineapple or Frankie Bananas, or, you know. So,
Banana in the bunch.
Yeah. So Vic about $25,000, which wasn't a big deal. Making that in one night, you know. So the book, Vic thought how sweet it is, you know what I mean?
Doesn't matter.
He's in New Jersey. It's a gambler, you know. And so the guy's estate called Vic and said, I'd like to talk about collecting this and that. And Vic said, who are you talking to? The real name was, and Vic didn't know if I mean, are you talking about so-and-so? He said, well, yeah, that was a pseudonym. He said, well, he's a bookie. That's illegal. The guy said, well, it was incurred in good faith. And we still, Vic said, hey, get out of here. And he hung up. Well, the guy continued to call him.
He wanted that 25,000. Don't forget, in those days, that was more than 25.
Yeah. Send letters. And so Vic,
he wasn't giving up, was he?
No. And so Vic ran into Frank and he said, you know, people in New York, man, or New Jersey, this guy's bugging me. And Frank said, when are you going to be in New York? And Vic said, well, I'm going to be there next month on the 5th, working the Copa or something. You know. Frank said, okay, call the guy and tell him to meet you there. Don't tell him I'm going to be there. Frank flew in. He had a private jet, you know. Frank flew in, and they went to a restaurant Frank always went to in New York, and they're sitting upstairs in the back. Nobody else is in the room, and they're eating. And the guy walks in, and Vic motions. The guy walks over, and Vic says, you know Frank Sinatra? And the guy is real impressed. I mean, well, certainly I know of him. It's a great honor, sir. And he shook his hand. So Frank said, sit down. Would you like something to eat? The guy said, no, I'll just have some coffee. And they traded a few niceties, and then Frank got in his face with a couple expletives, and he said, what's going on? And the guy said, well, he's incurred the debt. Frank said, the guy's a bookie. You can't call it. But still, we feel I've had enough, so he lapelled the guy a little. He said, come here. And they walk about 10 feet from the table, and Vic couldn't hear what was going on. And Frank Sinatra said to the guy, do you know who I know? And the guy said, no. And Sinatra leaned over, and he whispered in the guy's ear. The guy stood back and he said to Frank, you know who I know? And he whispered in Frank's ear. And Frank came back to the table and said to Vic, pay the guy. So that somewhere in there there's a lesson.
There's a name.
There's always one guy.
There's always one guy that knows. There's always one guy.
One guy who's a little hipper than the last.
You think everything's totally hidden. Nobody knows.
There's always one more guy.
There's always another guy. Or a person that saw something.
Yeah. But he
so the motto of the story is pay the bill.
That's right. So Vic wrote him a check on the spot. Never questioned again.
Absolutely not. I know that we have to close out, but you were on the Johnny Carson show for 60 times. 60 times.
60 some, I don't remember.
60 odd times. I guessed on Johnny Carson.
I did the last week because all the regulars came in for the last week he was on. First of all, when he told me, he said, I'm finally going to quit the show. I'm going to retire. I said, retire from what? You come here 4 days a week. sit behind the desk, everybody writes
A
the
couple of
material
hours.
for you, you don't do anything, and you're the producer.
Sounds like somebody I know.
I mean, this was like unbelievable, you know, and to my time on the Tonight Show in those days, for 1 minute, if you bought open time, it was like $38,000 for 1 minute.
For 1
and there
minute.
used to be like 30 minutes of commercials. He's the producer, he's paying everybody scale. $312.
Yeah, $328.
Yeah. It
I know,
finally
'cause
got up
Hal
to,
Roach wanted to get paid when he went on a show.
yeah.
And he
Same
said,
thing.
well, you're going to get union payment. That's Hal Roach, the big producer. You
Yeah.
know who Hal Roach was. And the same thing, they pay the minimum the union pay.
That's all.
That's all
did.
they pay,
But
nothing else.
it was great because I did the show with so many wonderful people. It
Yeah,
was nice to
you're
meet
not-
them, including great actors and like Luciano Pavarotti. I got to meet him. Everybody said, you won't ever
Do you know
get
something?
near
We
us."
could sit here for 2 or 3 hours probably, but my producer is looking at me and saying, Ninon.
I never liked your producer. I can tell you now. I never liked her. Pureza, from the first time I met her, I never liked her.
She wants us to shut up. She wants us.
I don't know what
We're
it is
having,
about her.
We're
I
having
just
a
never
great
liked
time.
her.
We're having a great time. We're having a fabulous time.
Incidentally, are you from London? From that
I'm from
area?
England. No, I'm from Torquay, actually.
Oh, okay.
Torquay, Devon.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of TV shows in London.
In London?
Yeah, Bob Monkhouse and Des O'Connor.
Oh, yes, Bob Monk. Bob Monkhouse.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Go back a little way.
Yeah, Des O'Connor. I have to tell you, Des O'Connor
There's the O'Connor, yeah.
he was a very square guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
the comedy
Good
on
and
the
proper,
show,
yeah.
he was very square. And the opening, I went to the rehearsal, and I was sitting down front, and it was Ted Heath's orchestra
Oh,
plus
Ted
strings.
Heath.
It was
Oh.
a killer orchestra. And
Yes.
the band played this intro.
But it was an orchestra, very
Oh,
big.
a huge orchestra.
Huge,
the
humongous.
band played this introduction.
Yeah,
I mean, this
yes.
was cooking. And Des O'Connor came walking down the stairs singing "Love You," and I thought he was doing a joke. I thought he was being very camp, and I started laughing. I said, "That's beautiful," and the microphone said, "Cut." What's that laughter going on? I said,
Oh, Pete, you are so funny. I unfortunately have to leave. Pete's been absolutely amazing. What stories? I'm going to definitely have you back again. Will you come
I
back
can't
again?
come back, not unless it's Marie. There's something about her. I just don't like it, man.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see. Well, we'll have to do a secret one then. We'll do a secret one.
Okay,
see.
we'll do that.
We'll do a secret one. Is that
Okay,
okay?
that's okay.
Okay, we're going to do a secret one with Pete, and I'll have Maria under the table somewhere.
Okay, we can do that.
Just a joke. We love to tell jokes. I love to follow up.
That's good.
So we're doing it. Thank you for watching Vegas Live with Ninon, and we're going to be right back with our next guest. Take care.